Good morning. Good morning. What a beautiful welcome in. Thank you to the bell choir. That was just gorgeous. Welcome if this is your first time joining us, and welcome back if this is your community. I need to adjust my little step stool. One moment, please. Very good. First Parish is a welcoming congregation. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you move around in the world, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We welcome you here in the meeting house or on Zoom or wherever and whenever you may be watching this service in the future. I'm Jan Miller. I use she, her pronouns. I serve on your board of assessors, and I'm happy to be your worship associate this morning. Please be sure to read the announcements in the order of service. Immediately following worship, you're invited to join us for coffee hour in Scott Hall just across the courtyard. Today, the Board of Assessors is hosting a cottage meeting at noon here in the sanctuary to answer any questions you have about the annual meeting warrant and proposed budget that were sent out this past week. Please join us as we prepare for annual meeting on Thursday, May 30th at 7 p.m. The auction details are in the announcements in the order of service. There will be the raffle basket drawing in Scott Hall at 11:30, so if you bought your raffle tickets, be sure to be there. And auction item pickup is available from 11 to 1:30 p.m. today. And Reverend Aaron has an announcement about the results of the auction.
So let's have a drum roll or something to build up the anticipation. The auction total for this year, we have raised $14,566. Now, some of this total will go to support our summer produce project, the Pay It Forward cause for this year, which will be providing food to Framingham State summer students who will be living on campus. Some additions to what Jan said around the details on picking things up. Items with no bids have been discounted. They are available to purchase in the Huntley Room. And thank you to all who worked and all who participated. The success of this auction would not have been possible without you. Now please take a moment to turn your phones or other devices that might make noise to their quietest setting. While we love your human noises, your laughter, your cooing, and your singing, beeps and buzzes can be distracting. Since 1701, people have gathered as this community. They've been coming here to rest or to recharge, to be challenged or affirmed. Those people are like you. You belong here, maybe only for the next hour, but we hope for longer. We are happy to have you with us. Now I invite you to take a comfortable breath in and to release it out. Continue to take a few more comfortable breaths. Begin to release whatever it is you need to let go of, to be more fully present to yourself, to one another, and the sacred in this time and this place. The kindling of a flame is one of the most primal things humans do. The flaming chalice is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, and we light it to begin every worship service, as well as many other committee meetings. It means that we have set this time apart as holy. Our chalice lighting is written by Pat Uribe Liche. We come together with our tired minds and bodies, with our confusion and our questions, our uncertainties and our fears. We come together with our hopes, with our pasts and our ideas, our passions and our faith. We come together bringing all of who we are, trusting that in gathering we will be renewed, and that together we can create the world we long for. I invite you to please rise in body or spirit, both work just fine, to sing our opening hymn. It's number 1066 in the turquoise hymnal, O Brother Sun. remain standing to sing our song of affirmation and our spoken affirmation words, which are likely imprinted on your heart but can also be found in the order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve all life with compassion, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God. You may be seated.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Lauren. I'm the director of religious exploration here at First Parish. I use she, her pronouns, and I would love to say with all of you, good morning and welcome to church. I brought some friends with me today. Friends, this is Chris. This is a story about something that happened to Chris in school one day. So one day in Chris's school, the teacher asked the class to tell them something that was special about their families. And Chris didn't want to answer because their family wasn't like anyone else's family they knew. Chris lived with a foster family, and they didn't know anyone else whose family was like theirs. So they waited, and they thought, maybe if I listen, I'll get an idea of what to say. So one of the other children stood up. June stood up and said, my parents have been best friends since first grade. They really like each other. Thought Chris, that's not what my family is like. My family just has mom and the kids. So they stayed silent. There are lots of kids in my family, said Sam. I have 10 siblings. Thought Chris, there are lots of kids in my foster family, but it's still different. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so this is Aiden, who said, both my moms are terrible singers, and they love to sing really loud. And Mel said, I have more grandparents than anyone I know. Chris's mom didn't sing a lot. And Chris didn't have many grandparents. Francis said, I'm losing kids. I don't do that for real.
the Reverend Aaron Sokol-Wiseman. I use he, him pronouns. It is my honor to serve as your senior minister. And we set aside this time in our gathering to share with one another the joys and the concerns and the sorrows which are now shaping our lives. After our final candle is lit, we will sing the 2 verses of There Is a Love. The words are in your order of service. Start with this sorrow from Vicki Carrion. Writes, my wonderful neighbor Janet has just been diagnosed with lung cancer and was placed on hospice care with not long to live. Joy and sorrow are woven fine together. Here are the joys of our gathered community. Debbie and Dave Doucette share this joy. Our son-in-law has survived a quadruple bypass surgery. Thank you for your thoughts. He will have a long road of recovery ahead of him. This from Lynn Damianos. Joy, congratulations to Dean and Ann Arvidsson on their 30th wedding anniversary this Wednesday. It is Tuesday. Carol and Bob Boyce share this joy. We're happy to provide the flowers today from Garden in the Woods to promote planting native plants to help the environment, and in honor of our anniversary being celebrated this week. 37 years ago, we were married at the First Parish. Ben Long shares this joy. My brother Tim has graduated medical school in Vermont. And this joy from all of us to the auction committee. Thank you for running our 66th annual auction. Your work adds so much to our congregation, both in your fundraising efforts, but also in the ways that you encourage our connections to everybody. We thank you. We light one final candle for all of the joys and all of the sorrows that remain too great to share, but still held in our hearts. Let us now sing, There Is a Love. Now is the time we set aside for contemplation, meditation, and perhaps prayer. I invite you to return your attention to your breath, that comfortable breath in and out, perhaps the only constant in your life. Notice that which is supporting you. A chair, a pew, the muscles and bones in your body, the strength of this gathered community. O Spirit of life and love, named and unnamed, but who calls us each by our true first name, which is beloved, we give thanks for all in this community. This community of communities, this community of families. We give thanks for all that we have. We know that it did not have to be this way. We know, too, that there are people in our midst who are mourning, people who are healing, those living with addiction. Let us find ways to lend a helping hand and a listening ear, knowing that we cannot go through life alone. May we have the courage to reach out, ask for help when we need it, and to give help when it is requested of us. Our world, it is beautiful, but it is also broken. War tears families apart. May we find ways to advocate for peace in all of those war-torn parts of our world. Let us work to bend the arc of the universe towards justice, ending oppression in all of its forms. From time to time, our humanity shows a little bit too much. We put up barriers between ourselves and others. We disconnect. Because we are breathing, friends, there is always time to move back into right relationship. Always time to say, I'm sorry. When our flaws are glaring, may we be reminded that we are loved and lovable, not in spite of these imperfections, but because of them. We are beautiful, and we all could use a little bit of work. Say these words and do all things for love's sake. May it be so, and amen. Now, this is the time where we let our silence go a little bit deeper. I invite you to sit in the quiet of this space so that you might rest, listen, pray the prayers of your own hearts, or simply do nothing for one whole minute. About once a month, we designate our offering on a Sunday morning to benefit the work of a local organization. Today, we are benefiting Family Promise, and Lauren Falwell and the team will come down to share a little bit about the work that goes on with Family Promise and the work that we are supporting.
Good morning. Today's Share the Plate will be going to Family Promise Metro West, an organization that I know is near and dear to the heart of this church. We have been providing shelter, making meals, and providing hospitality to their precious families for more than 13 years. My name is Lauren Falwell, and I'm your current coordinator for Family Promise here at First Parish. Today, I am so thrilled to have Danielle Conti, Executive Director from Family Promise, to talk to you about all the great things they're doing there.
Thank you. So I'm Danielle, and I just want to say thank you for all the wonderful support that you've given us over the years. Family Promise started here in the Metro West area as a result of a grassroots, community-based effort, and we're still basically working that same way. We would not be able to do the work that we did if it weren't for the partnerships that we've made, especially with our congregations, with organizations, and with companies, and with people in the Metro West area. The reason we do it is because the income that people make cannot support their housing, and that just continues to get worse. So pre-COVID, we were really successful in being able to support families to sustainability, basically being able to help them find an affordable housing unit, give them supportive services and what they needed to stabilize, and then they were able to sustain that for a period of time. Since COVID, the cost of housing, as I'm sure you all know, has been astronomical in this area, and it's getting more and more difficult for us to stabilize those families in sustainable, affordable housing. So we are just as needy now probably as we've ever been. We have more families that are coming to us asking for help now than ever before. The families that we help are usually low to moderate income. There's an emergency assistance program here in Massachusetts that help the lowest income families and the lowest income individuals. We specifically focus our attention on low to moderate income families. Those families can look however they look. Kind of, I thought what your little presentation earlier was pretty fitting for us too, because sometimes our families, oftentimes are single parent families. Sometimes they're two-parent families, sometimes they're two moms, they could be two dads, they could be a grandma and a daughter, they could be all different ways that they look. The one thing that we ask is that they have children under the age of 18, because we really focus our attention on trying to create sustainability for those children. And in many ways, trying to break the cycle of poverty and violence and dependence that happens as generations go through housing instability and low income. So at Family Promise, we are still working really hard. Last year, we helped more people than we had ever helped before. We helped stabilize 111 families, and in those families, there were 209 children that were able to not have to sleep in their car or on the street or doubled up or not knowing where they were going to be the next day, but instead, they were able to wake up in a nice, warm home, however that home may look. We have our shelter here in Metro West, but we also support families that are in the community and transitional housing, and then we help families that are in their own units. We help them continue to try to afford those units. So whether you help our organization or any other organization, I think the one thing that we probably have in common is that we are driven by love as well. Love for our neighbors and for our community members, and trying to make it so that everybody has the possibility and the hope of having a home and a family and a future. So thank you for what you do to support us in that. And I think I'm helping at coffee talk after. So if you have more that you'd like to share or talk about, I would love that. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you so much. Due to the many structural and procedural changes that have been made at Family Promise over the past few years, their needs have been changing too. Please join us, as Danielle just mentioned, in the memorial room today around 11:15. Get your coffee, whatever. We have some desserts. And to learn about how we here at First Parish are adapting what we provide and do for Family Promise to meet their changes. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Before we sing our next hymn, I wanted to take a moment to thank Lauren Fawell for serving as our coordinator for Family Promise, for serving as one of our delegates as well for the UU Urban Ministry, and also for all of your faithful engagement and consistent commitment to our diversity and equity exploration team. Thank you for all you do. Let us now rise in body or spirit, both work fine, to sing hymn 15, The Lone Wild Bird. I have a brief reading from Adrienne Murray Brown's book, Emergent Strategy. It is also about wild birds. Starlings' murmurations consist of a flock moving in sync with one another, engaging in clear, consistent communication and exhibiting collective leadership and deep, deep trust. Every individual bird focuses attention on their 7 closest neighbors, and thus manage a larger flock, cohesiveness and synchronicity at sometimes of over 1 million birds. My dream is a movement with such deep trust that we move as a murmuration. The way groups of starlings billow, dive, spin, dance collectively through the air to avoid predators, it also seems to pass time in the most beautiful way. When fish move in this way, they are shoaling. When bees and insects move in this way, they are swarming. I love all these words for this activity. Here's how it works in a murmuration, a shoal or a swarm. Each creature is tuned in to its neighbors. The creature is right around it in the formation. This might be birds on either side or above or below, the 6 fish in each direction. There's a right relationship, a right distance between them. Too close and they crash, too far away and they cannot feel the micro-adaptations of the other bodies. Each creature is shifting direction, speed, and proximity based on the information of the other creature's bodies. I wonder if you remember the first time you learned about a family that looked different than the one that you were raised in. Maybe it's when you noticed that a neighbor's house only had 1 parent and kids. It was a family that had a grandparent living with it. Maybe another neighbor's family was just 2 people of the same gender and their 2 large dogs, like it was for me growing up. Maybe you learned about it when you did an activity in school and you discussed who was coming to a holiday meal, and other classmates of yours had a much larger family than you did. There were cousins and nieces and nephews and aunts and uncles. Maybe you learned about it firsthand, a conversation with 2 parents They said that they were divorcing. Maybe it was an aunt and an uncle whose house you visited every now and then, but they had no kids of their own. Maybe a family with 3 parents raising kids together. Or a bunch of friends that always seemed to go on vacation together, or one person and their pets. How did it feel when you realized that your family was different from that of a friend? Our families, too, change over time. Storylines diverge. New cousins and characters come into focus. Love wanes, love grows, beloveds die. Children are adopted, new babies are born, parents get a new job that reorients life. Children move away, they go to college or take a job far from home. The story continues onward. In our church, we are a community of families, some of which might look like yours, others may be different constellations of love, all beautiful. There is a potential for beauty everywhere. In our church, we celebrate all. Gay families, poly families, multi-generational houses, single people, divorced families, step families, roommates, families that are too distant, and families that are frankly a little too close for comfort. I should say that those families that I have just listed, they should not need a modifier. But sometimes it is important to be explicit in that welcome, because sometimes in other churches, that full beauty is not affirmed. We affirm and celebrate that wide range of family constellations. And I also want to be clear that I know that families can harm as well. If a family has caused you harm, I am sorry. We are here for your healing. We are here for functional and healthy families. What a beautiful mix of families we are. Now, there was a study done in 2021 called the American Community Survey, which demonstrated that there were at least 10,000 different combinations of how families are oriented, just from those surveyed alone in the United States. You can go online to look at diagrams of at least 4,400 of them. It will take a while to scroll through all of them. A different 2020 study showed that the most common U.S. family type was a single person living alone, 28% of all families. Then married with no children at 22%. Then 21% were married with children. 11% were composite, which the survey said were roommates or non-family connections living together. 8% of families studied were extended. 6% were single mothers, and 2% were single fathers. So much of what I have spoken about today is about families made by love. That's the key here. Love makes a family. Familial love, which the Greeks called storge love, makes a family for sure. Eros, romantic love, that can make a family as well. Filial love, friendly love, platonic love, we don't have that enter our conversations often. It should, though. You have those friendships that might not exist in the same physical space all that frequently, but when you do, it's like no time has passed. I think those friendships are sacred. They exist in a kairos time, a time beyond and different from chronos time. There is something deeply powerful about those relationships where there is a two-way vulnerability. One-way vulnerability relationships are also crucial, the ones that you might have with coaches or therapists, doctors, pastors, or spiritual directors. To get through life, you need a pretty good-sized pit crew. Matt Bloom, an author in the field of flourishing in leadership and in ministry, writes that ministers, but perhaps all leaders and perhaps all humans, need a good on-stage life, a good backstage life, and a good off-stage life. Those one-way vulnerability relationships are about building a good backstage, as well as friendships, which are more of the offstage relationships. It's always moving to me when I read an obituary of someone who has died to see mention of friends by name in the list of survivors, especially in those days when you would pay for obituaries by the word, to spend money listing your loved ones' friends. Think back to both of my grandmothers, Jean and Marjorie, who had lifelong friends. Friends that they met in high school, and in both cases, those friendships lasted longer than their marriages. We have ceremonies for birth, for death, for graduation, for marriage, for name changes, for career milestones. Why do we not also have ceremonies to mark friendships? As is often the case, there were ancient ceremonies to mark those relationships. The Greeks had a name for it, which I am going to try my darndest to pronounce: adelphophaesis, brother making. There's a lovely interview by Rihanna Cohen with Claudia Rapp about the practice. It was recently on NPR a couple of weeks ago. The earliest inklings that we find for these kinds of prayers to be performed between two people who are on the same spiritual journey. They're expected to pray for one another and would sometimes even be buried in the same tomb. They would then be considering themselves as brothers, but in a bond that is created through the Holy Spirit, so that it is actually considered to be a bond stronger than blood. Lay people who adopt the practice for themselves in order to either cement friendships or neutralize enemies. It was also done in the Balkans, and Muslims and Christians would swear brotherhood so that they would not have to fight one another in religious conflicts. In China, the practice was for survival. Sworn siblinghood often took place at the end of a dynasty. People had to rely on each other to achieve their goals, and sometimes even for survival. Relationships for survival. This reminds me of a 2021 article in the New Yorker magazine on the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services of the 1970s, which was quietly placing gay adolescents in gay foster family homes for several years. This was apparently a very common practice in several states as well around that time. Michael Waters writes about the story of one person, Dan Ward, who benefited from this. Michael Waters writes, social workers were wrestling with the sheer number of kids in the foster family system. Gay and trans kids who were often rejected by prospective foster parents were especially difficult to place. Finding gay foster parents just seemed like a natural solution. But those social workers, in some cases inadvertently, were creating something very radical: state-sponsored queer families in an age of intense discrimination. Dan Ward remembers, my caseworker put her job on the line for me. I care deeply for that woman. I've tried to track her down, that caseworker, Marion, but I have been unable to locate her. It's possible that she died in the years since then. She made a dramatic difference in Ward's life. People like her, Michael Waters writes, helped to author an essential chapter in the story of queer families and their acknowledgement by the state. We have things like that too in our church. I'll admit that I do bristle when I say that when I hear people say that churches are their family. I understand if you have said this, and I have said this too. I understand what you are trying to say. But a congregation is never truly a single entity. There is, in fact, no actual thing called the congregation. It is made up of individuals. The definition, the what it isness, the essence of a congregation is going to be different based on the eye of the beholder. The metaphor of church as family is too narrow. Paula Cole-Jones says this: we close the door in a sense because families are units. I say to people often that families have a hierarchy. You know where the authority is in a family. And if we impose that on this community of communities, then we're saying to people is that the authority channels are very, very narrow. In a family, you know who you can bring home and who you can't, and it's unspoken. We impose that metaphor on our church. But I wonder if Jones's metaphorical family is also too narrow. I wonder what model of families she is basing that off of. What is her metaphorical family? Does she mean that church isn't a nuclear family? When I hear or see or read family, I do automatically, most of the time, add nuclear in front of it. Maybe Jones's metaphor of family is also too narrow. My friends, the church is not nuclear family. It is something more countercultural, deep, alternative kinships. These countercultural ways of doing family are not countercultural to being human, but are ways of being realer and closer to being human. We aren't your mom or your dad or your siblings. We're something way further outside of the norm. We lean into our tethers. Jones continues on to say, metaphors are so powerful. You use the metaphor and it conjures up all kinds of meaning that are unspoken. We need to experiment with and experience the community of communities as a metaphor for how we will organize ourselves and how it will grow. Because that not all of those communities are not only in our congregations, but that is our bridge to the wider community outside of our doors. So Jones finishes, I want to encourage people to intentionally begin to experiment with this idea of our congregations as a community of congregations, a community of communities. Our congregation is to that community of communities. I look out at all of you and I see those communities, the bell choir, the singing choir, this gathered bunch on a Sunday, Women's Spirit, the board of assessors, religious exploration families, the Caritas team, and the people who provide food and rides and a listening ear. Others are more informal and ephemeral. A group of folks around a coffee table after the service checking in with one another. The congregation is a community of communities. What's true is that we are like starlings in flight, each caring for 7 of our neighbors, which means that we are also cared for by others. Because of that constellation, the murmuration of starling can move nimbly with agility. Go back to what Adrienne Marie Brown wrote. Each creature is tuned into its neighbors, the creatures right around it in the formation. There is a right relationship, a right distance between them. Too close and they crash, too far away and they can't feel the micro adaptations of the bodies. Each creature is shifting direction, speed, and proximity based on the information of the other creature's bodies. So my friends gathered here, the church isn't a family. Well, at least not the families created by love or by blood. No, it's something a lot deeper. The church and the congregation is a place where we practice a deeply connected, deeply embodied alternative kinship. It is life-saving. It is beautiful. And this is the shape of our families. May it be so, and amen. That bell ringing out there means it is just time for us to wrap up. our service. So I invite you to rise in body or spirit to sing our closing hymn, number 289, Creative Love, Our Thanks We Give. So as we leave this friendly place, let us take the light of love out into our world and use it to brighten our pathways. And when we need to rest or recharge, be challenged or affirmed, may that light guide us safely back. May we hold the light always, and the light hold us always. Amen, and go in peace.